Wrecks, crashes, havoc, limit down, all words we've heard the past couple weeks here since President Trump commented on the possibility of importing beef from Argentina because some say the price of beef for the consumer is too high. Well, let's break this one down. This is where I bring in Corbitt Wall. Corbitt is a livestock analyst for DV Auction, and we find him every day commentating and researching on the Feeder Flash on nationalbeefwire.com, which I encourage y'all to check out, by the way, and we'll provide the direct links to Corbitt's Feeder Flash in the show notes for this episode. Corbitt, old buddy, great to have you back on the program. By the way, this is by no means marketing or investment advice that we're going to go through, just two old cowpokes sharing their thoughts. So, okay, let's get a better understanding of just what the heck is going on. Let's go back in time and try to make heads and tails of this current cattle market.
Well, it's been well advertised that some folks think that the retail beef price is getting high. And I'm not sure how they're measuring that. Because if you take it in comparison with almost any product, beef is really affordable in comparison. You compare it to potato chips, you compare it to any other kind of food, and it's a whole food, a wholesome food, and it's just amazing that they're seeing that. But what they're going back to is they're saying a lot of our consumer inflation is mostly grocery inflation, and because beef is one of the more expensive items on a normal grocery list, they're dedicating a lot of that inflation to beef. And people don't really know how to answer that other than our numbers are tight. But really, the price of beef retail or even in a food service market has very little to do with the price of cattle. They're going to sell that stuff as high as they can sell it, no matter where we're at. If our prices are low or our prices are high, or that's why they loved the COVID pandemic, because they could use the excuse that production was low and price it high. Of course, people were buying all the toilet paper, and so they were going to buy all the ground beef too. And so then people saw stories of empty meat cases, and that made them even more aggressive. And so they took advantage of it. And we're nowhere near as high on our wholesale beef prices or retail beef prices as we were during that. And cattle weren't all that high at all back then.
It just happens to be, if I'm understanding this right, we're at kind of an anomaly where after COVID, this took place. Our cow herd numbers are the lowest that they've ever been. And it just happens to be where the price of beef and people are paying for protein and nutrition and to know where it's coming from.
Yes. And Tigger, it's just gotten bad. You know how it is. Up until we've seen this recent rally, which has really been going on for 5 years, but hot and heavy for 2. Really, up until about 3 years ago, it didn't pencil out to raise cattle. As a cow-calf producer. You could not make sense of it. And we were down to just the guys that were doing it, for the love of the game. They just, that's what they did, and they were cow-calf people, and they were going to continue to do it, but didn't make any sense at all, and hadn't for a long time. Well, they had one good year there in 2014, and that was very short-lived.
And we got to add in there, too, sorry to jump in, Corbitt, but a lot of those people, when you say for the love of the game, don't have a choice. That you're in that deep. You kind of have to keep going. That's the nature when it comes to production agriculture, cattle, or if you're farming soybeans. Once you get in that deep, you have to keep going because you figure the amount of physical natural resources, I'm talking just land, that it takes to actually maintain that operation, because the moment that you lose it, you will never get it back and your enterprise is gone and it's done.
Oh, yeah. You could say you could get out, but, people got their kids, that are planning on coming in there. But I tell you what, I can't stress enough how much this wildlife preserve for hunting and, just entertainment value of the land has changed things in the last 20 years. You can basically sell that ranch to somebody that's just going to let people hunt on it for more than you can another rancher, and they
Mhm.
won't put a cow on it anywhere. And that's one reason that our numbers are so tight.
When we look at, and here too is I'm going to ask your opinion of who had or has the ear of our president because of statements that he made. And that has caused a tremendous uproar in not just the cattle business, but I'm going to just say livestock in general. I mean, there's just been a complete uproar about this, about claims that were made. So that's one question is, in your opinion, who's got the ear of the president? And when it comes to the potential of importing Argentina beef, to my knowledge, and correct me if I'm wrong, Argentina doesn't even produce enough beef to feed their own country, let alone start exporting to the United States. So kind of catch us up on that timeline, and then we'll dive into what's happening as of current.
I tell you what, you and I both know, and your listeners definitely do. Uh, this president, our President Trump, he just makes statements all day, every day. And when we haven't had one like that, I don't know, not in my lifetime. We haven't had one that, will just answer questions on his way to the car or his way to the helicopter or whatever. And he is just making statements all the time. And of course, the media just takes off and runs with him. And, he had in his first term, he had a pretty intense ag advisory group that was well publicized. This term, I have not really seen one, especially when it comes to beef. Now I know he's friends with some influential people that's in the beef industry. I don't know how often he talks to them. I don't know if it's that often. I've said it on my program before. President Trump doesn't know about agriculture. He really doesn't. But he does know about economics, and he does know about supply and demand and things like that. But he's not familiar with the things that you and I talk about every day that affects the market price of cattle. And I think he jumped out there. Another thing we have to think about, and anybody that knows me knows I'm a big Trump supporter. I'm disgusted with him right now, like everybody else is. But he's always 2 or 3 moves ahead of everybody else. Always. When he said that, we should ramp up our imports of beef from Argentina, he was doing that because he was in discussions with the Argentine president about maybe we should do some more trading. He's just laying platform for that. And I don't believe that he felt it was going to make as big a shakeup to our cattle markets as it did, because I don't believe that they are fully aware of how sensitive they are, especially our cattle futures. They're just so sensitive. I mean, they're just barely hanging on a cliff, and a puff of wind or anything will make them go down. And we've known here for the past probably 6 or 8 months that we were vulnerable to have this market fall in a big way, because it's just propped up there. And I think our tight supplies justify a lot of our market, but maybe not all of it. Maybe we were blowed up, with moods and excitement and all that kind of thing, a little more than what fundamentals would justify.
I agree. A little more emotion in there than what we normally
exactly.
have. Yep.
So we were flying pretty high anyway, and I think that was just a jolt. And like it or not, a lot of the media, a lot of the traders, a lot of the people that are involved with the investment of the futures and stuff, whenever they said it, they probably blew it up a little bit more, and to give us a hunk, just to give a little dig to the cattle producers, because they know that most of your production agriculture people are pro-Trump.
Corbitt, I'm going to cut you off because we need to take a quick break, but hang on here. I want to bring you back on and talk more about this current cattle market. Crew, you're listening to the Ranch It Up radio show, and we'll be back right after this. Hey, crew, we are back with the Ranch It Up radio show and Corbitt Wall talking beef imports and markets. So where are we at with this whole thing, Corbitt? There has been talk of imports from Brazil, and a number of producers and consumers, too, by the way, are asking why we need to import in the first darn place. We have everything that we need right here. Is the additional beef, is it needed to fill the grind?
We've always imported beef from other countries, realistically, as far back as what we're talking. We've always done that. And yes, you're right. It's mostly for the grind. We do a pretty good job of cleaning up our beef. We eat about 80% of what we produce here. Maybe a little bit more here of late because we're down on production, but we eat most of it. But everything, we feed our cattle so well that everything we've got is really fat, which makes a higher priced and higher grade, product in our retail meats, in our higher end cuts and our best primals, so we can have sirloins and steaks and all that kind of thing. But on our grind to make our hamburger meat, our cows are fat too. And so most of the cows that they grind up and put in there, they need, that's why the bulls have been bringing so much lately. The bulls, basically, when you start grinding them up, they don't have any fat in there. And so you have to throw a bull or two in on top of, 20 or 30 cows to try to get that lean percent back to where your housewife thinks she wants it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People think they want really lean ground beef and they want really fat steaks, because they're paying more for the steaks and they want them to taste good.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they don't mind if the ground beef doesn't taste good because they want it to be really lean. And that's why we bring that lean in, because we've got countries like Brazil and Argentina and that they basically just have cattle running out, and I call them brush fed. They've never had any grain. Probably haven't had everything that they wanted to eat, all their lives. And they might be 3 or 4 years old and be a steer or heifer, but they kill them over there, and most of the product is ground up because it'd be too tough to eat if you were trying to eat a ribeye roll out of it, and it wouldn't have enough fat in it to make it taste worth having. And so they get these tubs of lean meat from these other mostly South American countries, and they bring it in, and it's really handy to throw in that hopper with that other ground beef from our fat cows and our fat trim that we've been adding a lot of value to through importing lean beef. Is we have a lot of fat trim, put it in there, and it takes that lean grind that we're getting from them, and it makes it more palatable, and it adds so much value to it.
Your phone has been blowing up for the past couple weeks here, right?
It's been dinging the entire time, and I don't know when you're putting this out, but my phone has been dinging ever since I've been on the phone with you.
So when you talk to some different guys out there, what are you telling these guys? And of course, this is not investment advice. This is not marketing advice. This is just cattlemen talking to cattlemen, sharing opinions. What are you saying to these guys? You're saying, hey, this is what happens in the cattle business. It doesn't matter. This is what happens in industry. There's going to be bumps and mountains that we got to climb, and this is just the nature of the beast?
Yeah, well, it's hard to convince somebody that when their calves are suddenly worth $500 a head less than they were 2 weeks ago.
Exactly. Yeah, I get it.
They're pretty upset. They get one check, and that's a big hunk out of it. We've seen our feeder board drop about $35. These limit moves, these limits are so big now, they will just absolutely take your head off. And it's scary out there. But what has changed in our fundamentals? Not one thing at all. And all this talk about Argentina has a higher beef consumption per capita than we do.
Right.
By quite a bit. They like their beef over there. And they don't produce a whole lot of it. And what little that they have to sell for export, China takes a big hunk of it. So what they have available is not a whole lot. And even if we took it to the levels that Trump had talked about, like quadrupling it or more of what they were giving us, and taking the trade barriers off and the quotas off and all that kind of stuff, if we indeed took every bit of that, it still wouldn't be 0.5% of our production, spread out over a whole year. It wouldn't grease the pan, Tigger.
As you can imagine, Corbitt and I could talk and talk and talk. Hey, I appreciate the time, Pard. You can follow Corbitt's daily commentary on the Feeder Flash. Just head to nationalbeefwire.com and click on Feeder Flash. Follow on Facebook and or on YouTube. Now, crew, when we come back, market reports and the latest production sales. You're listening to the Ranch It Up radio show, and keep it parked.